Scripture reading is from Romans 8, verses 18 to 21. I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory about to be revealed to us. For the creation waits with eager longing for the revealing of the children of God. For the creation was subjected to futility, not of its own will, but with the will of the one who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself will be set free from its bondage to decay and will obtain the freedom of the glory of the children of God. This is the word of God.
Thanks be to God. Last Sunday was a glorious Easter here at our church. Our services were packed as over 1,000 people showed up for worship to celebrate Easter. Bishop Nunn inspired us with a powerful message of the resurrected Christ meeting us in Galilee. That is, when we join Christ in His kingdom work in the world. And I've got to tell you, I just love Easter. As on Easter, just like on Christmas Eve, you get a true glimpse of the impact of the Christian faith, as many, many people choose to proclaim to the world how God has touched their lives. Of course, another aspect of Easter that I love is that for me, Easter Sunday represents the beginning of spring. Now, this past week has raised questions about that, I know, but usually it represents the beginning of spring, which means it's time to go fishing. This past week, got a call from an old friend back in Laverne, Oklahoma. He called just to chat for a while, to, catch up with news from his family, my family. But the call sparked some fond memories of the years when I lived out in Laverne. And several of those memories centered around fishing at my favorite bass pond just outside of town. In fact, I recalled one day, it was a clear, warm fall day, actually. Around the time of year when waterfowl start moving across the country in their annual migration. So one just never knew what type or what group of birds might be visiting the pond on any particular day. Well, that day, I went there to fish, of course, but also to visit with an old friend, a mallard duck named Ritz. His parents had called him that because he was a quacker everyone loved. That's about as good as the jokes get today, folks, so you might as well enjoy it. Anyway, shortly after I arrived, here came Ritz waddling over. I spoke first. "Hi, Ritz, what's new?" "Right over there, that bird standing on the bank, he's what's new. He's remarkable." "Really? What's so remarkable about him?" "Oh, just watch him for a while," replied Rich. "You'll see what I'm talking about." And it wasn't long before I saw what Ritz was talking about. That bird took wing and he flew around the pond several times, and then all of a sudden he dove at lightning speed toward the water surface, hit that surface like a torpedo, and disappeared. And then after what seemed like an eternity, he popped out of the water and shot back up into the sky. "See," Ritz said, "isn't that marvelous? Oh, what I'd give to know how to do that, to experience something that magnificent." "Well, why don't we go and ask him how it's done?" And we did. "Oh, nothing to it," he said. "It's all in the commitment. You put everything you've got into the dive and you make sure you're going at full force, and you've got to do it beak first without hesitation. And when you enter the water with total commitment, it's one of the greatest experiences of life." "Well," Ritz said, "I've got to give it a try." So up he went into the sky and he circled the pond once, twice, 3 times. Then all of a sudden he turned toward the earth, went streaking toward the water at full throttle, beak first, his body looking like a bullet. But at the critical moment, just as he was about to enter the water, he flinched. Well, actually, it was a little bit more than a flinch. It was more like trying to quickly stick his toe in the water to test it before he actually dove in. And the result was a horrible sight. There was a huge cannonball type of splash. Water feathers went everywhere. Poor Ritz must have done a dozen cartwheels across the water's surface. Well, after all the commotion had died down, Ritz ever so slowly paddled his way over to where I was standing. It was obvious he was suffering the pain of the crash and the deep disappointment, and he said, "Somehow that wasn't as satisfying as I'd hoped." You know, there's a lot of people in our world apparently feel the same way. Life and many of the experiences and opportunities that come with it, life is just not as satisfying as we had hoped. And so deep within us, below the surface of life with its frenzy of activities, beneath our polite smiles and casual conversations, behind the facade of confidence we tend to display in public, at the depth of our being, there is an expectation of something more, a longing for satisfaction. In his book, The Taste of New Wine, Keith Miller speaks of that longing in this way. One day it was so bad that I got into my company car and took off on a field trip alone. As I was driving through the tall pine woods country of East Texas, I suddenly pulled off beside the road and stopped. I remember sitting there in complete despair. I'd always been an optimistic person, had always had the feeling that there was one more bounce in the ball. After a good night's sleep or perhaps a couple of martinis, one could always start again tomorrow. But now, there was no tomorrow from my perspective. I was like a man on a great treadmill going no place in a world that was made up of black clouds all around me. As I sat there, I began to weep like a little boy, which I suddenly realized I was inside. There was nothing I wanted to do with my life, nothing of consequence or meaning. I looked up toward the sky and cried out, "Oh God." Do you hear the despair in Keith Miller's voice? Despair is one of the signs of the longing that I'm talking about. It's an indication of a life that at its very core is anything but satisfying. And there's other signs: anger, self-depreciation, greed, fear, anxiety, insecurity, cynicism, bitterness, hatred, all point toward a basic dissatisfaction with life. Dissatisfaction may very well be the defining characteristic of the culture that we live in. I mean, just think about the conversations that you hear, say at the coffee shop or in the beauty parlor, at your civic club or some other social gathering, even within your family circle. Are we talking most of the time about how great life is, about how blessed we are with wonderful opportunities to grow and invest our talents in ways that make a difference? Talking about how richly blessed we are by conveniences and by comforts and technological advances that would literally blow the minds of folks who lived just 100 years ago? In other words, are we accentuating and celebrating the positives that are unquestionably there for each and every one of us? Or are our conversations really pretty negative, even spiteful? Complaining about problems, griping about imperfections, pointing out how we are always shortchanged or treated unfairly in some way, shape, or form, throwing darts of criticism and disapproval at other folks, being fairly negative about everything. When you put our culture under a microscope, you're apt to discover streams of dissatisfaction running deep and wide throughout nearly every level of society, and perhaps even within yourself. Now, to be honest, for some time I thought that this phenomena of dissatisfaction was a trademark of our day and age. However, I've discovered that I was wrong. Dissatisfaction is not simply the trademark of the American culture of the 21st century. In reality, it's the predicament of creation. At least that's what Paul is saying in the book of Romans. Creation awaits with eager longing for the revealing of the children of God. Everything is not all that it could be, not all that it should be. And so all creation longs for something more pleasing, more fulfilling, something better than the way things are right now, today. And that's right. All creation is longing for that which will finally, ultimately, truly satisfy. In his book, When God Whispers Your Name, Max Lucado shares a story of some newlyweds who found themselves dissatisfied and certainly longing for more. You see, their first night of marriage was a disaster. They arrived at the hotel in the wee hours with high hopes. They had reserved a room there because of advertisements of a romantic getaway, a honeymoon dream come true. But that's not what they experienced. Seems the room was terribly skimpy. The tiny room had no view, no flowers, a cramped bathroom with only a toilet and a sink, and worst of all, no bed. Just a fold-out sofa with a lumpy mattress and sagging springs. It was not what they had hoped for. Consequently, neither was the night. The next morning, the sore-necked and disappointed groom stormed down to the manager's desk and vented the anger of his dissatisfaction. After listening patiently for a few minutes, the clerk simply asked, "Sir, did you open the door on the east wall of your room?" The groom admitted he hadn't. The clerk said with confidence, "Open and step through that door." The groom returned to the room and opened the door he had thought was a closet. There, complete with fruit basket, flowers, chocolates, and iced-down bottle of champagne, was a spacious bedroom, heart-shaped jacuzzi, and a breathtaking view. Can't you just see that couple standing in the doorway of the room that they had never gotten around to discovering? Oh, it would have been so nice. A comfortable bed instead of a lumpy sofa, a window with a marvelous view instead of a blank wall, a romantic tub and spacious restroom rather than a tight toilet, and they missed it. How sad. Cramped, cranky, and disappointed. Well, what they longed for was just a door away. Paul says what creation longs for, what you long for, is just a door away. It's the door of authentic discipleship. Now, even as I say that, I know what a lot of people are thinking. I've tried that door, and it wasn't all that I'd hoped for. No, I didn't find much satisfaction there at all. But I dare say, folks who say that don't really step all the way into the door. Well, it's like my friend Ritz. Instead of diving in total commitment, they try to stick a toe in just far enough to test the waters. Oh, I'll make a contribution occasionally, but tithing, now that's pretty fanatical. I just wonder, when I go to church, I just wonder what that preacher's going to say today that I disagree with and will offend me. when I go to church, I just don't go very often because as soon as I get there, I look around and I see all of those hypocrites that show up as well. Volunteer to help with what? No, that's someone else's responsibility. You know, someday when I'm not so busy, got nothing better to do, I just might read a little bit of that Bible. May even try a Bible study. Yes, I did open that door. I stuck my foot in. I tested the waters. In fact, every so often, I stick a toe in, or maybe 2 toes, just to see how the water's feeling. And when a crisis comes up, I've even been known to get on my knees right there on the threshold of that door. I've even been known to belt out a verse of God Bless America. And I've got to admit, I've enjoyed the occasional breath of fresh air that comes from that room, but somehow it hasn't been all I'd hoped for. Friends, it just doesn't work that way. As surely as it was less than satisfying for the duck to take a half-hearted dive, you will never have your deepest longing satisfied by sticking your foot in the door of discipleship to test the waters. In fact, Jesus tells us it's impossible to just stick a toe in to test the waters. As he said, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross daily, and follow me. Whoever does not bear his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. Folks, taking up the cross means total commitment. It did for Jesus. It does for us. And the satisfaction we long for only comes through that type of commitment, total commitment. The commitment that Paul tells us identifies us as the children of God. It's a commitment that's expressed in John Wesley's covenant prayer. Wesley encourages all Methodists to pray this prayer. I am no longer my own, but thine. Put me to what thou wilt. Rank me with whom thou wilt. Put me to doing, put me to suffering. Let me be employed for thee, or laid aside for thee, exalted for thee, or brought low for thee. Let me be full. Let me be empty. Let me have all things. Let me have nothing. I freely and heartily yield all things to thy pleasure and disposal. And now, O glorious and blessed God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, thou art mine, and I am thine. So be it. And the covenant which I have made on earth, let it be ratified in heaven. Amen. It is that commitment sincerely made and consistently lived, total commitment, that will set you free from the bondage of dissatisfaction. Yes, God's word for you today says, just imagine, believe, all of creation, the stars in heaven, the mountains, the streams, the flowers, the birds, your family, your friends, your very own heart. All of creation longs for your decision of total commitment to being a disciple of the resurrected Christ. Longs for you to live daily as a child of God.